Hello everyone and welcome to Edusurg Small Talk series where we discuss some key topics related to common surgical practice. So our today's topic is one of the very commonly seen patients in our outpatients department, and that is a patient with postcholecystectomy syndrome. And in this small talk we are going to predominantly focus on how to identify when the patient has postcholecystectomy syndrome and how to diagnose or rule out the various differentials that are present in this entity. So, what is postcholecystectomy syndrome? It is the persistence or reappearance of symptom cluster which was present preoperatively. So, as always, we are simplifying the topic for you, and the very easy way of identifying if a patient has postcholecystectomy syndrome is to see if there is persistence or continuation of symptoms which were present before cholecystectomy, or if the patient has reappearance of previous symptoms with or without some new symptoms after cholecystectomy. Now, why discuss this topic? This is because, as we all know, cholecystectomy is one of the most commonly performed surgeries, and you would be surprised to know that nearly one third of these patients have postcholecystectomy syndrome of some form. Females have a higher risk of postcholecystectomy syndrome, and this is particularly higher when you have performed a subtotal cholecystectomy. So always suspect postcholecystectomy syndrome if a patient of subtotal cholecystectomy presents to you with persistence of symptoms or reappearance of symptoms. So now let us see what are the types of PCS or postcholecystectomy syndrome. Basically, there are two types. Early is within the 2 years of surgery. An example of this is retained common bile duct calculi, and late is after 2 years of cholecystectomy when the common bile duct calculi are recurrent, that is, they are forming again and again. So, again, a terminology retained versus recurrent common bile duct calculi, the difference is based on timing after surgery. Similarly, timing after surgery helps you know whether the patient has early post cholecystectomy syndrome or late post cholecystectomy syndrome. So, what are predominantly the differentials? When you see the textbooks, you will see a very long list of causes, but essentially in our practice, we see only two subdivisions in this group. One is the biliary etiology of postcholecystectomy syndrome, and the other is extrabiliary etiology of postcholecystectomy syndrome. Extrabiliary predominantly includes pancreatic disorders or liver related diseases. Rarely the patient can have upper gastrointestinal tract disorders and few other rare disorders such as biliary dyskinesia or neuritis or mesenteric ischemia. Some of these disorders may have psychiatric or psychological origin. However, these are diagnoses of exclusion. As we are always told, rare diagnosis is rarely right. Predominantly, these patients fall into biliary or hepatopancreatic and upper gastrointestinal extrabiliary etiologies. So now let us see the biliary etiology first. So whenever a post-cholecystectomy patient presents with right hypochondriac or epigastric pain with or without fever, vomiting and or nausea, remember that these may be the symptoms which are present before cholecystectomy and now presenting again. Patient can have jaundice and pruritus or simple intolerance to food. And all these symptoms may point towards the biliary etiology. So our classical Charcot's triad, pruritus, food intolerance, some of the common symptoms when you should suspect biliary etiology of post-cholecystectomy syndrome. What is the differential diagnosis of biliary etiology? As we have seen, early and late post-cholecystectomy syndrome. Usually the etiologies are very simple, but they are given in a very different way in the textbooks. So let us try to simplify the differential diagnosis of biliary postcholecystectomy syndrome. Sadly, the most common of these is bile duct injury, and this we have already discussed in few of our talks on Edusurg clinics, but I will just brief on it again in this talk. Retained common bile duct calculus which can produce postcholecystectomy syndrome, biloma or an abscess which can occur due to spilled stones during cholecystectomy, and this can again lead to PCS. Biliary dyskinesia and papillary stenosis, two very broad topics. Rome classification is there for the diagnostic criteria. And Meniere's syndrome. Post-cholecystectomy Meniere's syndrome is a very rare diagnosis, and you should consider it only after ruling out the common differentials, which are bilioma, common bile duct calculi, and bile duct injury. Late presentation is, as we have discussed, recurrent common bile duct calculi, bile salt diarrhea, Meniere's syndrome, biliary dyskinesia, and papillary stenosis. Biliary injury in late PCS presents as biliary stricture. Again, I would stress on the fact many times we forget that the cause can be extrabiliary. So do rule out extrabiliary common causes of postcholecystectomy syndrome. So if you are suspecting a biliary etiology in postcholecystectomy syndrome, few of the very common conditions that are seen in the immediate postoperative period leading to continuation of symptoms are a slipped calculus from gallbladder into the common bile duct, and this you can see immediate post-op. A common bile duct calculus which was missed before surgery, hepatitis A and E. Now these are very common, and unlike what we think, they can present in postoperative period as jaundice and can create confusion postoperatively, as the most common thought in a surgeon's mind is biliary injury when we see jaundice, but it can also be hepatitis A and E. And biliary injury, never miss a diagnosis of biliary injury, because if you can diagnose it early, you can repair it early and minimize the morbidity. So these are some of the common clinically seen causes of postcholecystectomy syndrome in the immediate postoperative period. So when we get a patient like this, first step is to review the records. Always review the records of the surgery. And how you start reviewing the records, you look for the indication of surgery, whether it was simple cholelithiasis or it was cholecystitis. If it was cholecystitis, what was the grade? CBD stones were present or not? Preoperative ERCP was done or not? CBD exploration was done or not? And presence or absence of pancreatitis. In the surgical notes, look if the critical view of safety was achieved, whether there was conversion to open, if yes, what was the cause, whether there was bile spillage, stone spillage, and extent of blood loss, duration of surgery, whether a drain was placed, if a drain was placed, when was it removed, and whether a bailout strategy like subtotal cholecystectomy was used. What all records are to be maintained, we have already discussed in one of my videos on safe laparoscopic cholecystectomy, which you can view for detailed discussion of this point. Another thing you have to see in records is the post-operative course, which includes complications and the days of hospital admission and the histopathology report. So these are all the things that you have to review in the records. So once you have reviewed the records, the next step is to see the common investigations. And these include a complete blood count to know if there is an bilioma or abscess. You will be able to find out elevated leukocyte counts. Liver function tends to know if jaundice is present and biliary obstruction is present or not. So alkaline phosphatase, gamma glutamyl transpeptidase, PTINR, and liver enzymes SGOT and SGPT are important. Imaging wise, the first step includes an ultrasound which will show an intrahepatic biliary radical dilatation if a patient has jaundice. and that will guide our next investigation, which is most commonly an MRCP, unless the patient has a collection on ultrasound, in which case we would do a CT scan first and drain the collection before doing the MRCP. So these are the basic investigations that we do as the first step of managing a patient with postcholecystectomy syndrome. This is because the step A gives you the most common differentials, which are the calculi. Now, you can have remnant calculi or you can have retained or recurrent common bile duct calculi. Remnant calculi can be in the cystic duct remnant when it is known as a cystic duct remnant syndrome, or it can be gallbladder remnant when you have done a subtotal cholecystectomy, and this can also result in cholecystitis, mucocele or carcinoma, which can lead to persistence or reappearance of symptoms in your patient. So apart from cystic duct remnant or a gallbladder remnant after subtotal cholecystectomy, there can be retained or recurrent common bile duct calculi which can lead to choledocholithiasis or cholangitis. Rarely the surgical clips can migrate, and cystic duct remnant, gallbladder remnant or surgical clip migration can result in a Meniere's syndrome. So, based on step A investigations, these are the common etiologies of the biliary PCS that you can identify apart from biliary injury. So, this is one of our patients who had a gallbladder remnant after a subtotal cholecystectomy done outside. When they presented to us, the patient had jaundice and the MRI showed this post-cholecystectomy Meniere's syndrome, and this patient underwent a completion cholecystectomy laparoscopically in our department. After the step A investigations, we come to the high-end investigations that are done in post-cholecystectomy syndrome when we suspect biliary etiology, and these include secretin enhanced MRCP, endoscopic ultrasound, and or hepatobiliary scintigraphy or HIDA scan. And these investigations usually give you the diagnosis of biliary dyskinesia or papillary stenosis. So for these two etiologies, these three investigations play a very important role. But since these are rare, these are the step 2 of our investigative pathway. As we have discussed, when you are ruling out the biliary etiologies, even the rare ones, never forget other causes of postcholecystectomy syndrome which are extrabiliary. And these include upper GI causes such as reflux disease, peptic ulcer, esophagitis, gastritis, and hepatocellular and pancreatic etiology. These can be ruled out by the step 1 investigations, ultrasound and MRCP or a CT scan. However, for upper GI disorders, you will need an upper GI endoscopy. Once you have worked out all these causes, including biliary injury, which we will see next, then you go into rare causes of post-cholecystectomy syndrome, which can have psychological or psychiatric basis, or you can have an rare conditions such as irritable bowel syndrome or mesenteric ischemia, diverticulitis, intercostal neuritis, or wound neuromas. Now, these are not rare conditions by themselves, but for post-cholecystectomy syndrome, these are rare diagnoses, and that is why you should rule out the biliary etiology, hepatocellular and pancreatic etiology, as well as non-biliary upper gastrointestinal tract etiology first, and then consider these causes. So just a brief into post-cholecystectomy biliary injury. This is because we have covered post-cholecystectomy biliary injuries in a very detailed manner in our videos, which you can look at in the playlist of webinar, as we had a webinar on laparoscopic cholecystectomy and biliary injuries. However, in brief, when you see a post-cholecystectomy patient with jaundice or a suspected biliary etiology of PCS, remember the Strasberg classification and remember that these can present as biliary leaks or biliary strictures. Leaks mostly in the immediate and early post-operative period, though you can have a biliary fistula, and strictures in the long term of biliary injury. What are the goals of therapy in a patient with biliary injury? You have to control the infection first. That is, you give parenteral antibiotics and you do ultrasound and CT scan for percutaneous drainage of collections. So, this is the first step, that you control infection. Second step is complete delineation of entire biliary tree, which can be done with the help of MRI now. And if MRI is not giving a clear picture, you can do a percutaneous transhepatic cholangiography or endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreaticography or ERCP, especially when the injury type is cystic duct stump leak. Important point in these patients is to rule out vascular injury along with biliary injury, because early repair is contraindicated if you have a major vascular injury in a case of biliary injury. After doing all these three steps, that is control of infection, delineation of biliary anatomy, level of injury, and ruling out vascular injury, is when you can do a re-establishment of biliary enteric continuity. Again, timing of repair is a big dilemma, and this has been discussed in a debate in our webinar, which you can see in the webinar playlist. Principles of repair are that it should be tension free, it should be mucosa to mucosa. It is usually Roux-en-Y hepaticojejunostomy with or without stent, and hepatectomy in these cases is very rare. So once you have ruled out your collections, trained them, antibiotics have been given, the most important thing in repair of biliary injury is the timing. And as I have mentioned, there is a debate on early versus delayed repair on our channel in the webinar playlist, which you can have a look. Just to summarize it, to complete our talk on postcholecystectomy syndrome, the biliary injury can be detected intraoperatively, postoperatively in the early period, or late detection with a benign biliary stricture. Intraoperative detection, the most important point is that if there is lack of experience in biliary repairs, you should put a drain and transfer the patient, and that would be the best possible treatment for people who are not experienced in managing biliary injury. Second thing you can do is do a cholangiography on table if you are experienced. You can convert the case to open surgery if you are not well versed with laparoscopic cholecystectomy and laparoscopic biliary repairs. Injury of a small duct less than 3 millimeters can be done by simple ligation of the duct, which can be done laparoscopically or by open technique. If the duct is more than 3 mm, you may need reimplantation of the duct, because that duct cannot be compromised and it can lead to hepatic atrophy. So larger ducts, you can do a T-tube and primary repair, except when the injury has been caused by cautery and the injury has to be less than 50% of circumference. Whereas if it is a cautery injury, or if more than 50% of the circumference is involved, then you will have to do a biliary enteric reconstruction, which we prefer over biliary to biliary reconstruction, which is not much preferred in today's scenario. Early repair is recommended only when there is no vascular injury, patient is stable, and patient has no sepsis. So these three are very important points when you want to do early repair of biliary injury. As always, an experienced surgeon is important, because the first repair has to be the best repair for the patient. As the number of repairs increase, the outcomes go down. And this has been proven across many studies. So do this repair only if you are well trained in biliary enteric surgeries, or put a drain and refer the patient to higher center. So first repair is the most important repair. Prevention is always better than cure, and same applies to cholecystectomy. How you can prevent is by doing safe cholecystectomy, and this we have already demonstrated in our step-by-step surgery video also. But just to highlight, never dissect below the Ruvier circus umbilical fissure line and do a safe cholecystectomy. Always establish the doublet view of critical view of safety before cutting any structure in the area. Thus, to summarize, post-cholecystectomy syndrome, the patients can have continuation or reappearance of symptoms. It can be early when less than 2 years of surgery and late with more than 2 years of surgery. As already mentioned, the differentials include biliary and extrabiliary, and more commonly, you will see biliary etiology of PCS. Stepwise investigations, as I have discussed in this brief talk, will help you assess the patient in your outpatients and manage them as per the diagnosis. As mentioned, do a safe cholecystectomy, learn all the steps of cholecystectomy so as to prevent the occurrence of post-cholecystectomy syndrome. I've already highlighted some of the videos that relate to this talk, but we have these talks. The first three are in the small talk series, and the last two are step-by-step surgery, where we have step-by-step demonstration of critical view of safety as well as bailout strategies in difficult laparoscopic cholecystectomy. The biliary injury and safe laparoscopic cholecystectomy was a webinar that we did. Email us on learnwithedusurg@gmail.com and we will send you the entire webinar videos. I hope that this video on assessment of post-cholecystectomy syndrome will help you in managing your patients in the outpatients department. Keep sending in topics that you want us to discuss and we will definitely cover it in our upcoming videos. Keep learning and share these videos so that most people can benefit from it. Thank you.